Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show. Today, bringing another really awesome guest involved in science and technology that's creating a better and safer tomorrow for all of us. Today on the show, we have the honor of being joined by Colonel Dr. Tanja Roy, who is commander of the United States Army Medical Research Institute of Chemical Defense. They are a subsidiary of the U.S. Army Medical Research and Material Command, which we previously profiled, and is a leading science and technology lab of the DoD for developing, testing, and evaluating various medical chemical warfare countermeasures, as well as therapies and materials to treat casualties of chemical warfare agents, as well as biochemical and other, as they refer to, emerging non-kinetic acute battlefield injuries. Colonel Dr. Roy received her commission from the University of Notre Dame Reserve Officer Training Corps as a distinguished military graduate in the Army Medical Specialist Corps. She holds a PhD from University of Pittsburgh, Rehabilitation Sciences and Epidemiology, both a master and doctorate in physical therapy from Baylor, a master's as well from Pittsburgh in epidemiology, as well as a master's of strategic studies from the United States Army War College. Most recently, Colonel Dr. Roy served as the Director of Occupational Health Sciences at the Defense Center for Public Health, and previous to that, created and served as the Director of the Soldier Performance, Health, and Readiness database at the U.S. Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine. She's also a graduate of the United States Army Medical Department Officer Basic course and a variety of other important courses, including the U.S. Army War College and their Defense Strategy course. And extensively awarded, extensively decorated. We'll put her extensive bio in the bio notes of the show, but looking really forward to getting into this show. Colonel Dr. Tanja Roy, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show, and thank you so much for your service to the United States.
Thank you for having me, Ira. I'm very excited to be part of this. I've watched a lot of your podcasts, and they're all very amazing. So thank you for all the great things that you do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, you have a fascinating background. I'm looking forward to all the themes that we're going to be getting into. Would love to start off at the beginning of what got you interested in physical therapy, what got you interested, obviously, in serving our country, and a little bit of the early days. I know a lot of the early work you did was in musculoskeletal injuries, both in combat as well as, after combat, as well as areas of traumatic brain injury. Tell us a little bit about your background, if you would.
I think I got into physical therapy because I really enjoyed sports in high school, and I was did okay academically as well. My mother was a emergency room nurse in Boston. And so when she would get home from the late shift, I used to make her wake me up and tell me about her patients. And I'm sure that she was picking selective ones appropriate for children when she told me. But I really enjoyed all of those stories from her. And my father is also a researcher for the U.S. Army. So he's a civilian and he works for the Army Research Laboratory. So growing up, he did research at Watertown Arsenal in Massachusetts as well. So I was at least around Army research as a kid, and I was around medicine, and I really liked sports. And so I was trying to kind of combine all of those things. And they ended up adding together to physical therapy. And I was interested in a school like the University of Notre Dame. So I applied and got accepted, and it is very expensive. So I also went into the ROTC program. I had done the Civil Air Patrol in high school, and I really enjoyed doing Civil Air Patrol. As a high schooler in junior high, I got to go do a lot of things, see a lot of different people, fly in planes, and have a lot of experiences. So I was kind of able to see what the Army, the military had to offer as far as giving you that broad view of the world where you get to see all these different things and meet all these interesting people. And so I wanted to find how I fit into all of that. So I went to the University of Notre Dame, and I was very interested in physical therapy. So I majored in pre-med there and psychology. And then I went and got applied to the Army Baylor program. So I went straight from Notre Dame into that. So I commissioned as a second lieutenant at 22, like the normal kind of route, and went through the physical therapy school at Fort Sam Houston. So it's a joint program, Army, Navy, Air Force. And that was excellent. And I really enjoy making the world better and doing things for other people. So healthcare and the military really offer you a lot of different avenues to do that. And so I kind of then went through my career trying to find ways to help more people. And so as different opportunities came up to help more people, I would try to kind of take them and leverage them. So after Notre Dame, I went to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany as a lieutenant. And then I was lucky enough I spent a year there and moved to Baumholder Health Clinic, where I was the chief at 25. So I thought that was very exciting. I got to start supervising and leading at 25 years old. And then, of course, I got to go spend some time in Iraq, and that was definitely eye-opening. And so what's happening there is the physical therapists were originally mostly just in clinics and hospitals, and you get a bunch of referrals and you go through referrals. But the problem with that process is by the time the patient gets to me, they've been hurt for a month, 2 months, 6 months, and it's a lot more difficult to fix an injury the longer it's gone on and the longer someone's been pushing through it. Because these guys are all trying to get their jobs done, and they're like every other high-achieving person. They take care of themselves last. So as you push through these injuries, they get worse and worse, and it's much easier for me to fix an injury if I can get you real quick the first day, the first week. Then I have a much better chance of getting you back to your full capacity quicker. And so the physical therapy core, the SP core, was trying to find ways for the physical therapists to get closer to the injuries and the soldiers. And so I joined the Army at the right time, and I got to be part of that whole process. So when I went to Iraq, I got to be essentially a brigade physical therapist before they even existed. So I went attached to a combat support hospital, which was the traditional role, a little bit back away from everybody. And what we did is then I went out with the main support battalion instead. And so I went out with their aid stations and was able to kind of travel around the different aid stations and be further out and get closer access to the patients so I could get them earlier and try to fix them faster. And then the Army was able to keep using this model. And now, so when I came back, they said, okay, look, well, that was good. So now we're going to do what's called a brigade physical therapist. So we're just going to assign you straight to the soldiers instead of to the hospital. So I went to Afghanistan as one of the first brigade physical therapists. And so I would cover down on all of RC East, so the entire quadrant of Afghanistan. I was the only physical therapist there, trying to travel around to these almost 100 little bases everywhere, which isn't possible to get to. So even the Korengal Valley was one of the ones that we covered down on. So I've been there, seen all those soldiers, try to get out to all these outposts to get to them and help them out. So I helped the SP Corps create that model, build that model, research the model to prove it works. So during all of these deployments, we're collecting all the data. So that was the first beginning in research outside of the master's program. It was collecting all the data in Iraq and collecting all the data in Afghanistan. And okay, well, what kind of data do we collect? How are we of value? How do we show that we're of value? So we collected data on who would have to get sent home if we weren't there, who was getting limited duty, how much limited duty were they getting, how are we able to decrease it? And we were able to collect from me and a few other physical therapists and put together that data and then show the Army, look, this is the benefit of having physical therapists on the line with the soldiers. You're medevacing, hundreds of less soldiers. You're saving thousands of man hours. Your injury limitations, so we call them profiles, but the limited duty are much lower. It's much better to have a physical therapist there. So the Army agreed, and brigade physical therapists were born. So that was an exciting time, and got to help create the courses, create the slots, participate, do all the research. And that was my beginning in research outside of the schoolhouse. And that was my first paper too, was on the data that I collected with the 10th Mountain Division.
Right.
So it was just all looking for better and bigger ways to help people and get to them sooner and help them more.
Yeah, it's interesting, again, thinking about, all the data you're collecting and information you're gathering. This, as I mentioned in the bio, this leads to, I think 2014 is when you publish your dissertation at University of Pittsburgh, which is entitled Risk Factors for Musculoskeletal Injuries in Deployed Female Soldiers. And needless to say, obviously, as you point out in your dissertation, a significant percentage of the Army of that, what you were studying, made up of women. Billions of dollars in terms of disability costs from these injuries, both in the military and on the civilian side, of course. And you studied multiple brigade combat teams. Talk a little bit of some of your learnings, because you learned, some of the conclusions were all about, as you were mentioning, important to study injury prevention programs, how we can improve load bearing ability, and so forth. And we talked a lot on the show about sort of the enhanced soldier of the future and all this, and we're talking to folks at DARPA and so forth. What were some of the core learnings there, and some of the things that you're like, oh yeah, this may be an interesting place for the technological innovation, biomedical innovation, and so forth. Talk a little about your dissertation.
Yeah, so that came about. So after I'd been deployed twice and had some experience, and the military started to look at the ground combat exclusion rule. And what I noticed is that even in my research studies, only 10 to 15% of the Army is female. And so when you go out and you study one brigade, your sample size is too small to be powered to look at the women. And then women and men are not quite the same. There's definitely differences. There's even differences at that time. There's differences in the jobs. So what I wanted to get a look at is, how different are they? We can't really tell unless somebody actually goes and does the work. So I had to get 3 brigades to get enough women. And previously, people had just been studying one brigade at a time. So going to 3 different brigades was definitely a bigger lift as far as all the coordination and tracking the deployments, and you get them before they deploy and after they deploy. And it was very exciting because all the women were actually pretty excited to participate. I did not have trouble really recruiting because they kind of had felt left out, that all the equipment was designed for men. And so I said, okay, look, this is your chance. We're looking at women only because they haven't been looked at. And so it was exciting to be part of that. And they were, fairly excited to help out. And they didn't complain. They went and did all the fitness tests and everything to see if we could figure out, because the easiest injury for me to fix is one that we can prevent.
Right.
So the SP Corps has done a lot trying to move our physical therapists into the prevention realm as well. Because if I could teach you how to train properly, if we can improve the training, if we can figure out what is the best training, we can decrease the injuries. And that's even better than me getting to the injured faster if I could stop them. So that's where H2F, the holistic health and fitness, comes into play. The Army is trying to create better training regimens so they reduce the injuries, because physical training is almost always the number one cause of injury. So if we reduce our training injuries, that makes a big difference. And the Army has taken huge steps trying to capture that and decrease those injuries and set the soldiers up for success. And being parts of that is very exciting. So the dissertation was before that and kind of leading in that direction. So I had to look at different ways to predict the injuries and what kind of training they needed. So like one of the things that we found was, so the ramp up in load carriage. So like you probably don't walk around with a 50-pound backpack on your back.
Right.
I don't usually do that now anymore either.
So if carry 2 kids, but that's a different
thing. Yeah, exactly. Then they grow up and then they carry you, hopefully. So if you went and deployed without any kind of ramp up and you just started wearing your gear, you were getting injured. So things like, okay, you got to start wearing your gear a few months before you leave and get used to wearing the vest all the time and used to wearing the heavier rucksack. And they looked at like the weight. So if a 50-pound rucksack is a higher percentage of my body weight than your body weight. But what we found was that the women, they were carrying smaller rucksacks at that time anyway, because they were not in the infantry. So the percentage of the weight, it wasn't that it was more than their body weight. So that wasn't a problem. It was the ramp up.
Right.
But now things have changed. You probably should repeat this study, except we're not really deploying in large numbers. But now we have, almost 4,000 women in combat roles. They have over 140 Ranger graduates that are female. So now you have a lot more women in those other occupations where you see those loads are going to be higher than they were before. So it would be interesting to try to redo it now with those MOSs and look at it. But that was the biggest thing, was the ramp up, or not having that ramp up and jumping into these heavy activities. And then lifting was a big thing. If you did a lot of, lifting in the supply yards, things like that, it put you at greater risk. Mm-hmm. And then the sit-ups, if you had done more core work, the sit-ups were kind of protective. So if your core was stronger, you had less injuries. Gotcha. So that was kind of what we found there. And hopefully it helped lead to some of these great things like health and holistic fitness, and that we're really trying to get out there again. And how can we help more people and get further ahead and protect more people?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the interesting areas, we chatted a bit about offline, I had to sort of do a little research on, is this injury related to something known as blast overpressure, which has to, and the sort of the basic research I did on it, sort of the way atmospheric pressure changes near a firing of a weapon or an explosion, and it was quite interesting just reading about this, that this is not just something that can affect cause traumatic brain injury, but also all sorts of parts of the body. There was something I read about leaky gut that can ultimately happen, the way the sort of the blast overpressure can impact the gut-brain axis and so forth. Talk a little bit about your work in this area. I think it's an area of sort of physical health, rehabilitation that we don't normally hear as much about in sort of the civilian side here, but I know it's something you focused a bit of your work on.
So blast overpressure is extremely important. It affects a lot of our service members. And it's been in the media recently. And again, it's another opportunity for us to try to get out there and help as many people as possible. So the position I was in before the one here at the Institute for Chemical Defense, I was the Director of Occupational and Health Sciences at the Defense Center for Public Health, Aberdeen. And so within there, we have what's called Health Hazard Assessment Division. Mm-hmm. And what they do is they do the assessments on all types of different equipment, and to make sure that when we field equipment, it's going to be safe for service members to use. So blast overpressure had been assessed for years and years and years, but what they were assessing was the blast creates a concussive force, like an impulse noise force, and it affects the organs in your body that contain air. And so the force transmits through those. So what they had been testing was its effect on your lungs and then effect on your ears. So the impulse, the blast, can actually rupture your eardrums, and it can damage your lungs as well, because it's an organ with a lot of air in it. But what they haven't really studied very extensively is what happens to your brain. Got it. And so people have started to realize that this blast overpressure is affecting people's brain and causing damage. And so now we go through our scientific process of, all right, this is a problem. Now we have to figure out, what about the blast that's causing the problem? How much exposure do we have, and how do we prevent it? And so that's where we are now, is trying to figure out all those things. But the service members, the Department of Defense, we want everybody protected. So they have all rolled out protective factors. Even though we're still figuring out the science, we're going to roll out as many protective factors as we can and get all the service members out of harm's way from the blast overpressure. So this involves education and training. Don't be closer to blast than you need to be. So you don't want to be on a catwalk over an area where people are firing, observing. But it's a great vantage point. It seems like a great training technique is, okay, I can be on the catwalk, I can see everything happening below me, and I'm able to tell you what you are doing right and not doing right. And I'm not in the area where you're going to hit me. But the blasts are coming up to you on that catwalk. Got it. And so teaching everybody that to think about, when you're firing all these different types of weapon systems, even the smaller ones, where are you standing, and do you need to be there? And is there anything nearby that could reflect the blast back that doesn't need to be there? Are the barriers too close to you? The blast's going to bounce off the barrier and come back and hit you again. And are the weapon systems too close? They need to be spaced apart, so you're not trying to fire your weapon system and then you're taking blasts from the weapon system on either side of you too. Mm-hmm. And if you're an instructor, do you need to be that close, or can you be further away? Let them fire and then tell them, these are the things you could do to improve, and these are the things you did well.
Got it.
So a lot of it is just considering and looking at the range and how it's set up to make sure that we're limiting the exposure. And then how many rounds do we need to fire? Because we need to train.
Mm-hmm.
You can't not train. And the whole purpose of these weapon systems is to cause damage. So there's going to be a blast. But can we reduce that blast in training? Do we need to fire ammunition with the same amount of concussive force that we would use in combat? Or can we fire ammunition with less of a concussion and still get the same amount of training that we need to be proficient? So we have different types of ammunition that will have lower concussive forces to try to help reduce that. They've calculated the allowable number of rounds. So these are the number of rounds specific to the type of ammunition and the weapon system and where you're standing. So are you the gunner? Are you the assistant gunner? Everything like that. It tells you how many rounds you can fire before you're at risk of injury. And so teaching everybody to use these things to protect themselves. And for some of the weapon systems, we have like little cones that you can put up on the top, and they will deflect the blast away from those firing it. So we're working on more advanced ways to do that. And the allowable number of rounds is based off of your hearing and your lung, because the science in the brain hasn't caught up yet.
Got it.
So we're trying to make sure everybody's protected as the science on the brain starts to catch up, because what we know is causing some damage, but is it the number of times that you're exposed, how close they are together, how big is the explosion? If I fired M4 1,000 times, is that better or worse than firing a howitzer once or a MOS system once? And so those are all the things that are still, we don't know. So we're just going to play it safe, and we're going to train to standard, because that's what we do, but we're going to do it smartly so that we make sure that we've reduced any type of injury risk that we can. And the Army and the DoD, they have rolled out full force to protect everybody on this topic. So it's very exciting to be part of that and see how quickly everybody pushed to try to make sure we're getting protections out there and get everybody educated.
Absolutely. Let's transition now to the Medical Research Institute Chemical Defense, and you know, as I mentioned, you know, it's part of the Research Material Command, which you've done a little bit on the past. Just talk a little bit. I mean, the mission is discover and develop medical solutions for chemical, biochemical, and other emerging non-kinetic acute battlefield injuries, doing medical research, clinical testing, and education. Talk a little bit about sort of just your step. Who called you up for this role? Because it's, I mean, obviously, you're generating a wide range of experience and everything we've just been chatting about. This is a little different, but nonetheless. What's the background here to how you arrived at the Chemical Defense Institute?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of expertise in chemistry. I did do very well in organic chemistry, but I have not taken that for several decades. And I did actually like it, but again, it's been decades since I have taken that. So in the Army, as you move up, you start to run different types of organizations where you are less and less of an expert. So I am not an expert in occupational health at all. So the health hazards was only one of the groups that fell under me. So we also had industrial hygienists, non-ionizing radiation. I know nothing about lasers and RF. I don't know a lot about industrial hygiene. So I was able to lead that group. And that was a wonderful experience. And I really got to work with all these experts in fields that I don't know anything about. So that was really educational for me, and learning how to lead where you're not the expert, and you have to enable the experts and trust them to be able to do their jobs and make a situation where they can do their jobs at the best so that the group succeeds. And previously, I also worked with the clinical public health and epidemiology group. There's another 150 people, and was not an expert in all of those different topics. That was a little bit more in my wheelhouse. It had epidemiology and injuries and things like that. So then after occupational therapy or occupational health, so the Army has what's called a CCAP or MCAP program. So it's a command assessment program you go to when you're a lieutenant for an officer. If you're a lieutenant colonel or a colonel, the Army is looking to pick the best leaders. So you'll go to this assessment beforehand, and you go through an assessment, and they're looking at your leadership skills and your ability to work with people, and take care of people and accomplish the tasks while doing everything in a positive way. So I went through that, and then once you're selected through that, then they try to line up your skill set to the open commands. And so I am a PhD level researcher. I have experience in research. I've published, I've gone through IRBs, all of that, just haven't done it with chemical defense. So I was able to take command here, which has been a fabulous opportunity. This is an amazing group of very, very talented people. I am an expert in nothing that they do, except for how research works. I know how research works. I know what protocols should look like. I know how all those things happen. So my job here is to make their jobs as easy as possible and make sure that we are aligned with the mission that we need to accomplish for the Department of Defense and the Chem Bio Defense Program, and have everything running smoothly in line with the priorities with the Chem Bio Defense Program and the Department of Defense, and to get there. So it's been a great experience, and the people here have been amazing. And I've learned a lot about chemical defense.
Yeah, I imagine, being there with you, and I know you oversee something like 300 different researchers and staff. So yeah, obviously you have an amazing team. Could you talk in general about and again, we'll put links to all this in the bio notes of the show, but clearly your research portfolio, it's almost like you have a small pharmaceutical company there that's totally focused on countermeasures, and we're talking about the things here. So we're talking about chemicals. We're talking about chemicals from biologic origins. So I guess something like botulinum toxin would be in your area, while folks over dealing with the bug itself would be somewhere else. But looking at sort of a range of things from cyanide to mustard gas and all that. What is, walk us through just a little bit of sort of what the organization is like. Because again, when I go click on some of these things, it's like you really could be developing everything from discovery, as we say in the pharma industry, to commercialization. All that, most of the stuff doesn't go into the civilian sector. But again, everything from toxins, toxicants, nerve agents, and so forth. What's your day like? What goes on?
It's an exciting place. Yeah. So we have 7 different, essentially research portfolios that we work under. So you did name a couple of them. One of our largest ones is the nerve agent countermeasures. So this is basically where we're trying to create the therapeutics and things like that, including pre-treatments, because wouldn't it be nice if you could just take a pre-treatment and then you don't have to worry about the nerve agent?
Right.
So we work on pre-treatments, and then we work on essentially the antidotes to the different types of nerve agents here. And so we try to find the best way to do that, and what are the best pharmaceutical options out there. So we do a lot of testing of things that we don't develop. So a lot of the drug companies will develop some of these drugs, and then we have standardized testing processes to go through and figure out, well, which one of these are the best, and are they better than the current gold standard? So like our senior scientist likes to say, we don't create the auto injector, but we pick what goes into the auto injector.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then we do look at and develop some of the pre-treatments. We have a scientist here, Dr. Lynn Cadeau. She just actually won a national award for her work. So she's created a transgenic mouse called the Kiko mouse. So it's a knock-in, knock-out mouse. And so the mouse that she created is more similar to humans as far as how it reacts to a nerve agent. And so we're able to use different types of things here to test and figure out which of these things is the best way to protect our soldiers and our service members. So it's pretty exciting to see all those things. I'd never met someone who had essentially invented an animal before. So yes, I do. It amazes me with their intelligence every day. It's amazing. We do have the toxin countermeasures. So we look at the botulinum type toxin, things from the biological area, like you mentioned before. And then we have agent mitigation. So there's 2 areas here. We look at the skin decon methods. So right now, the reactive skin decontamination lotion, that one is the gold standard. But it's been the gold standard for over 10 years. And so we're trying to see if we can find something that's a little bit better. And again, we have a standardized testing processes. So far, we haven't found one that's better, but we are constantly looking for the next best thing. And then we also look for in vivo protection. naturally occurring enzymes and how they can bind and break down nerve agent in the body before it gets to its target in the body. And those both fall under the agent mitigation area. The pharmaceutical sciences. So this is where we're looking at the pharmaceutical-based agents. It mostly focuses on things that will look at the ultra-potent opioids, such as carfentanil. So people don't always think about those being used as a weapon, but they can be used to hurt people.
Right.
And so we do a lot of work there, and that bleeds into law enforcement. So we do work trying to help law enforcement as well, and different types of first responders. We're currently looking at the nitrazines. So it's kind of like fentanyl, but it's not quite the same thing. And then it's been around for quite a while, but it has more recently now popped up in the drug supply here. I was talking to a researcher in the UK, and they said the same thing. It's coming up in their drug supply as well. And it's not newer, but it's newer that it's appearing in our drug supplies. And so what we're looking at now is it is similar to fentanyl and then its potency. However, we don't know, does it respond to different things the same way that fentanyl will? So what happens when we try to treat it like fentanyl? Is that going to work? Is that not going to work? Do we need to treat it differently to try to turn off the effects from these ultra potent opioids? And so it's pretty interesting. And like I said, it bleeds into the law enforcement area, and we get to do a lot of work, again, helping as many people as we can.
Got it.
We also have analytics and then medical diagnostics. So we look at both the best way to do things in the laboratory and then also in the field. So Dr. Shane Caston has created something called ChemDX.
Okay.
So it uses something similar to a glucose meter that you could buy at a pharmacy, except it will test for nerve agent. So it's a lot smaller, a lot more portable than what we have now. The test strips are a lot easier to carry. They don't expire as quickly. It's just a much more effective way to test for nerve agents than using the testmate, which is what we use now. So the ChemDX is something that we work on. We have the Toxicant countermeasures. So this is our broadest area. It's got 3 different subcategories. So it's looking at things that essentially do like the mucous membrane. So your eyes, their skin, so things like sulfur and mustard. We look for countermeasures for different types of the metabolic poisons. And then cyanide would fall into this category as well. So we look at different ways for countering cyanide. And then also for different types of pulmonary agents, they fall in here. We look for countermeasures there as well. And then combined injury, this is one of our newest areas that we look at because unfortunately, if you're talking about the battlefield, it's often not going to be as clean as there is just a chemical exposure.
Right.
So if you attach any type of dangerous chemical to an explosive, you could even have it on a drone. You could put on an explosive. You could, maybe find a way to put it into a round. And now you're dealing with injury to the body, physical injury, as well as the chemical exposure. So if you're trying to treat different types of physical injuries and you're trying to treat the chemical exposure, well, how are all those treatment techniques going to interact with each other?
Got it.
And so, because you don't want to treat one and make the other worse. But in order to do that, we got to figure out how they're interacting with each other.
Right.
So those are our main research areas. And then what we also do is take all those and then we try to turn them into, we have to teach everybody what we've learned.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll get to sort of dual use a little later on, but the whole sort of carfentanil stuff, because it's funny because I just read an article about that showing up because I'm here in Philadelphia and we have this horrible situation down a couple miles away in Kensington, this major open air drug market where all these odd things. Xylazine was one we profiled last year. This veterinary tranquilizer and all that. So yeah, no, it's very interesting seeing some of the potential crossover there. As you were mentioning with law enforcement and so forth. In addition to the portfolio, you also oversee this chemical casualty care division, which basically offers the medical training basically for first responders and so forth on how you identify, okay, there's a case here. We need to know what's going on, just like as we do with, say, a biologic agent. And I would guess in case of some of these agents that could go through the skin, we have to be very careful, not just how we diagnose somebody, how we touch them and all that. Talk about the casualty care division, and I mean, I mean, I'm sure you do all sorts of exercises, let's say to test ultimately these different scenarios that you're mentioning, how they could
Right. So
arise.
exactly. So we essentially teach 4 different courses. So after you do the research, well, now you have to teach everybody how to apply the research. Otherwise, it's not going to get out there and save people. So we teach the field management of or chemical and biological casualties course. We teach the medical management of biological and chemical casualties course, and we do these courses with our sister institute, RIDGE, which is the Infectious Disease Institute. We also teach the hospital management of chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive course. And we have one final new course that we've put in, which is the advanced pharmaceuticals course.
Okay.
So the medical course is geared towards medical providers, as well as first responders. So it's teaching them how to treat, exactly what you said, how to treat these different types of patients, how to do the decontamination, how to do the treatment. And then the field management of the chem and bio casualties, that focuses more on the decon part and less on the treatment, but there is still treatment. So this one is lined up for medics, EMTs, the true first line responders until you get to the providers, the doctors and the nurse practitioners and things like that. So we teach both of those courses. And then to build off all of that, the hospital course, so this would be how you do it as a fixed data facility. What are you going to do? And then what we were getting some feedback that, these courses are all great, but not me, I'm not a physician, I'm a physical therapist, but the physician, the nurse practitioner, like, all right, they have the PA, they've come into the hospital, and now I'm getting the patient in the hospital. Now what do I do? What am I supposed to do to treat them in the hospital as opposed to outside? Because the hospital management is more of like, your hospital has to deal with this event that occurred. So it's more on like, as the administrators and things like that, how do you run a reaction to this type of event occurring where you are? And so the advanced pharmaceutical course teaches the providers that are going to be inside the hospital as the casualties come in. Here is a refresher and a more in-depth look on which pharmaceuticals you're going to use for who, at what rate, and how you're going to apply them to get these patients back onto the right track. And so that's a newer course. They've just did this one up within the last year and a half. And so it's gotten a lot of positive feedback. So we're starting to try to increase the number of slots that we have and offer more opportunities for people to come. And these courses, we open them up to all of the Department of Defense. We also get law enforcement, all kinds of different first responders. We get from all different agencies, all different types of government agencies, not even agencies in the Department of Defense. We have people from agencies outside the Department of Defense. And then we get foreign students as well. So Italy, students from Korea, Canada, Germany, all of these different countries will send students to the courses as well. And then occasionally we will go out and teach. So if we go to Korea fairly frequently, so we'll take our instructors and send them to Korea. And then if they will gather all the students in that location, and we're able to send a few instructors instead of trying to send all these guys from Korea back here. So we'll go out and teach courses as well.
Very cool. Very cool. How do you, I mean, you mentioned sort of some of the collaboration and, working with, pharmaceutical partners potentially. Can you talk a little bit about how the organization collaborates, not just with external partners, but also some of the internal research groups? We've had folks from Notre, from DARPA, from USANCL on the show that are working in sort of related areas. Is there a lot of like inter-DoD collaboration? Because it seems like there's a lot to learn across these different, I'll call them sort of ecosystems of biochem defense. What's happening there that you can talk about?
Yeah, so nothing happens in a vacuum, and we are just one tiny cog in the Chem Biodefense program that DASD, or Dr. Watson, runs. And so I know that you've interviewed him. It's kind of funny. I knew who you were because when I took this job, I was trying to learn as much as I could. And I actually went on and watched the podcast that you have done with a lot of the different players at these different organizations. And so that's one of the ways that I got to learn about some of these different organizations that now we work with. So we fall under the Chem Biodefense program and Dr. Watson. So I've been able to learn a lot from him, and they set the priorities based off of the National Defense Strategy, the National Military Strategy. So all of those types of documents that come down, they guide, obviously, our defense strategy. And then the Chem Biodefense will use those to tailor the defense program and how we're going to go ahead and attack those priorities that the government has decided that we're going to go after. And so then we partner with DTRA and JSA, which is the Joint Program Executive Office for Chemical and Biodefense, which is Dr. Kritsovich, who you've also interviewed.
Yep.
So we partner a lot with them, and we do a lot of research with them. So that's where we do our more benchtop research, and we'll do a lot of it with the different priorities. As they change, we change what we're doing here as well. We work with them every day. There's not a day that goes by that we're not on the phone with somebody from that organization.
Nice.
So it's been pretty interesting to get to work with a big team like that. The JSTO team has been great. They are very supportive, and they work super hard, and they're good to work with. So we've had a really rewarding experience with them. We also work with JPEO Chem Biodefense, and that is Mr. Calvin. And so so he's been great. And they also, and these JSTO, they have a couple pieces on Aberdeen, but then a lot of them are down in Virginia. Chem Biodefense is on Aberdeen Proving Grounds. So it is convenient that they're right here with us, and we can work with them. So that works on a slightly higher level in the science realm. And we pass some stuff off to them. We get a lot of projects from them as well. So we probably talk to them every day as well, or pretty close to it. So those are the major organizations that we work with on a day-to-day basis. Everybody knows everybody else in those organizations. We work together so much. But that type of camaraderie and teamwork really create the ability to do these things and keep it running smoothly, and make sure that we're supporting the national defense strategy and that we're in line with all the priorities. And then we do work with DARPA and NIH. We work with NIH quite a bit. We work with DARPA as well. We work with the Uniformed Service University. We do a lot of work with them. Sure. So those are a lot of the key players that we work with inside the government. And then we do have some partners outside the government because, like I said, we don't create the auto injector.
Right.
We're looking at what goes into it. So we're looking at creating the thing. And then we have to go out and find a partner saying, okay, like ChemDX. So we created the theory, we created a prototype, and then have to go out and find a civilian partner in industry to, all right, this is what we've designed. Can you create it for actual use and sale? So we don't have any mechanics. We don't have any, we have engineers here, but we don't have anybody assembling things here.
Right. It's really interesting because and again, there is a tech transfer component of the on the website, and there's a page that talks about sort of the history of the organization and the various types of products that have come down the pike as a result. One of them, you were just mentioning before, you've involved in this naloxone auto injector. But thinking back, not a lot, but a decent amount of stuff, let's say, that's come out of the bad chemical space, like mustard agents and botulinum toxin, all that, have made their way into the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, Botox is a multi-billion-dollar product nowadays. Mustard agents, the early chemotherapy drugs and so forth. Any interesting, obviously non-confidential stuff, any cool dual use examples or other opportunities that you can mention that have been spun off or you're thinking about spinning off into the private sector? Because you clearly work with let's say a chemical space that a lot of us don't play around in, but this whole concept of repurposing is pretty hot nowadays in the pharmaceutical industry. And I'm just interested if there's any stories that you could tell us about potential other things that might pop out to the civilian sector.
So we do a lot with just chemical exposures in general. Not necessarily what people think of as like sulfur mustard gas
Right.
or chlorine. And even things that you think of that are like that, they do actually occur in everyday life. And we are exposed to, nerve agent is not something you're exposed to in everyday life, but you can be exposed to chlorine gas.
Right.
Sulfur and mustard gas, maybe a little less. But so one of our most recent success stories was Dr. Rockwood. So Dr. Rockwood, he's actually retiring this year after an illustrious career. And it was very fitting that he is going out with a bang. So he is an expert on cyanide, and he has spent decades studying cyanide and working towards, again, helping as many people as possible. And cyanide is something that is around, and you can be exposed to that. You don't have to be in the middle of a war to have that happen.
Right.
But currently, the treatment method for cyanide exposure is you have to get IV antidote. It has to come through an IV. And so that, if you are deployed or in any type of combat area, that's obviously problematic because we don't necessarily have, easy access to IVs and things like that. And even out here, if you're in some kind of austere environment, you happen to get exposed somehow to cyanide, it's not necessarily easy to give people IVs with the antidote in it.
Sure.
So what he's done is all of his research, he's been able to figure out a way to counter cyanide with an injection.
Nice.
So he's found the way to do that using the dimethyl trisulfide, so it's DMTS. And you're able to, so he's created that. So this process, this is how you do it. It can be injected. So then what he did is he went through the whole process, which takes years to hand it off to industry. And so the industry will be able to either take it and it can be either injected through a muscle or in through the nasal passage. So as we hand it off to industry, we've given them, hey, these are two different routes that you can go.
Got it.
You can create an intramuscular injection or you can create a nasal one. And so he has successfully done that. And I'm trying to find the name of the company, Defender Pharmaceuticals. So we're able to hand that off to them, and then they're able to go ahead and they'll go through the process, getting it through the FDA. And so that's a big win for everybody. It's a lot better way to treat any type of cyanide exposure.
Got it. Defender Pharmaceutical. That's a cool name too.
It is. They did a good job with their marketing there.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool example.
So that's our most recent one.
No, it's I love stories like that, and seeing how this work overlaps, of course, with and it's kind of timely because my son was telling me the other day that they're showing the Tylenol cyanide story now on Netflix, so kind of a very timely topic as well when you think about that issue. No, very cool. Tanya, what's coming up? I mean, I learned about you actually from Bob Kostovich after I had him on the show, and he had sent me the CBRN symposia, and you were front and center in that. That was a few months ago, but clearly a lot going on. It's great to see these conferences and other talks happening, and the sort of the cross fertilization. What should we be on the lookout for in terms of the rest of 2025, other initiatives that are public facing that you're going to be involved in that we should continue to follow you, and big news and anything else that is going to be happening that we should know about while we have you today?
So obviously our researchers are very prolific, and a lot of that is to get the information out there. So it's, you don't want to just research it and then put the data in a drawer and close it away. So they do work on different types of presentations and different conferences. So we are looking now to identify, what are the biggest conferences where we can get the information to the right people, and still be fiscally sound in how much money we are spending to get to these conferences, and present the data to other people that will then be able to take it and jump off from there. So we're getting a lot of return for our investment of the travel out there. So our guys are going to different conferences. So in the fall, we'll be starting back up with doing a few more of those and getting out there. We also had two high schools we had one this week and one last week. So we did get two high schools in here.
Nice.
And get them in there for tours and get some talking about STEM. We do summer outreach STEM as well with the middle schoolers. We have a program here that we work with the local middle schools, and they get to come in, and it's a camp that goes out throughout the summer and get different people in here, and they get to see all the different labs at Aberdeen Proving Grounds. We do summer ORISE, so we're going to get some summer college students in here working with us as well. And then even this weekend, we have an event with the community, so we will be at the Shamrock Park in Bel Air,
Nice.
having an event with our community there, and working for those. So we try to have as many events as we can. MHRS is coming up in August, and that's an annual one that we go to. And then you mentioned the Chem Bio Defense one that happens once every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
The Sharesh conference in Israel, we just had that one recently. We sent a few researchers over to there.
Cool.
We send people down to, like, SOCOM has some conferences for special operations.
Yep.
We just had some people do that one, go to SOCOM. We do a lot with SOCOM. So we instruct at some of their courses. And so we're out there doing those as well. We're trying to kind of ramp up all those different things. We also have our advisor phone line. So as I do the introduction for all these courses, I tell people, so we do the research here, then we're going to teach you how to use it. And then if you're like me, you went through in 2010 and you've forgotten everything. So now when you get out there and something goes wrong, here is the advisor phone line. You can call us, and 24/7, a medical toxicologist will answer the call, and they will help walk you through what you have to do in whatever environment you find yourself in and you don't remember what to do. So we can respond to real world events using that. And we also participate in exercises with the units all over the country and the world using that phone line as well. So those are some of the different avenues we have interacting with the public.
Very, very cool. No, it's a really impressive set of stories. And I really appreciate you taking us through this journey, which starts off with physical therapy. It ends up with chemical defense. And I look forward to really continuing to follow you and your team and what comes next, because this is such an extremely important part of, as the material says, protecting our warfighters, strengthening our nation, but really, really impressive set of programs, and wishing you and your team the best with all of it, Tanja. But again, for everybody that is going to be listening to this episode of our show across the various podcast networks and watching on the YouTube channel, again, you've been spending time with Colonel Dr. Tanja Roy, Commander, United States Army Medical Research Institute of Chemical Defense. Tanja, again, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to talk to us for a little while and walking us through everything you've been up to. Thank you for what you do and helping to protect our country. And as we like to say on our show, thanks for helping to create a better and safer tomorrow for all of us via the type of science and technology that you developed there. Really an awesome story.
Thank you for having me, Ira. It's great to get a chance to talk about what we do here. This is the most amazing place. They do the most amazing work. And just like you said, the ability to help others from this platform here at the Institute of Chemical Defense, these guys come in every day and they give everything they have to help everybody else out. And it's just an amazing place to be a part of.
Really great having you.
Thank you very much.